Chapter 7, Questions and Answers. What is treatment? Treatment is the term used to denote true prayer or scientific reasoning. What is the method of procedure in giving treatment? You must first learn your basic principle as defined in the preceding chapters of this book, otherwise you have nothing to demonstrate. It is most important for you to realize that you are not to attempt to demonstrate things. Your only motive in treatment is to prove your oneness with principle. You need not be least bit concerned about the objective manifestation, for they are automatically revealed as the result of your understanding. Your success in demonstrating depends upon your ability to put all belief in a personal self, who apparently needs things out of consciousness. How can I prevent these false thoughts from coming to mind? By remembering that you are a spiritual being in the world of reality, and that you are now in possession of the kingdom of heaven. Once you realize this, you will cease pleading with God to bring about things, and your prayers will be on a scientific basis, hence demonstratable. Is there any particular formula or method to which one must adhere in order to demonstrate absolute truth? None whatever, for absolute truth does not admit problems to be solved. If good is all and evil is nothing, there is no need for a formula to dispose of that which has no existence or life. Since you reflect all good, then you cannot add any more to your universe. Your only method of procedure is to understand the absolute truth about yourself and be free from all so-called mental delusions. It is the height of inconsistency to admit that principle is good in all, and then devote hours of valuable time attempting to destroy or heal that which one admits does not exist. Lack of logical reasoning has kept thousands of people in bondage to practitioners for years. Every individual should be instructed in absolute truth until he realizes that there are no problems, and then he will experience the peace of God. Thinking does not change a single thing. Spiritual understanding reveals the truth, and in truth you discover you always were free. No one can claim the distinction of being an absolute scientist as long as he admits there is a mortal mind or matter to be overcome. What happens when you pray or treat? Nothing. Treatment is proof that the action of God is taking place upon you, causing you to recognize your divine heritage. True prayer is like a weather vane. It is a sign that the winds of good are blowing upon you in your affairs. If nothing takes place when you treat, what is the advantage of treatment? You treat or pray because you cannot prevent it. Principle is the only actor, and this action is eternally taking place. When you find yourself treating, it is an infallible sign that adjustment has already taken place. Is God aware of one's personal problems? Since God is impersonal good, it would be impossible for good to know evil. Let us consider the principle of mathematics. Do you think it is aware of mistakes in arithmetic? If principle or God could be conscious of problems, it would not be absolute, for its consciousness would be divided between good and evil. How can God answer prayers if he is not aware of the problem to be solved? A problem in arithmetic does not necessarily mean an adverse condition or situation. It merely denotes lack of the understanding of mathematics. When you are working out a problem in arithmetic, you are actually dealing with nothing but your own understanding of the principle. Even the numerals are within your own consciousness. The manifestation or combination of numbers in the form of an answer constitutes the demonstration or proof of your understanding of the principle of mathematics. The same rule applies to the problems of life. Principle is the answer to every prayer. Therefore, all we need to do is to harmonize our thoughts with good and receive the answer which is eternally established. To believe that principle answers prayer is to believe that creation is not finished and that there is still something being accomplished. Should one devote a certain period of time to prayer or treatment? If you believe that you have to adhere to any particular practice, it is because that you believe that there is evil to be destroyed. Believing that everything needs a treatment is as much bondage as disease. Once you understand your divinity, you will know that there is no power to harm you, whether you are treating or not. Then your life becomes one constant acknowledgement of good. What is meant by going into the silence? No one can enter the silence until he learns to silence the false sense of materiality. The word silence, according to Cruden, means total surrender or subjection to. When one subjects every false belief to the analysis of absolute truth, and surrenders all belief in materiality to spirituality, he has entered the silence, and is then prepared to commune with the Father, which is in secret. Meditation is not the highest form of prayer. Active acknowledgement of good is conscious communion with God. Why are truth students reluctant to admit sin or disease and invariably refer to them as claims or beliefs? It is generally believed that a claim or belief in disease has less power than a disease itself, which is nothing more nor less than superstition. If you claim a thing, you accept it. Therefore, you might just as well accept the disease as to accept the claim or belief of it. Is it right to treat another without his consent? When you understand that treatment is nothing more nor less than an acknowledgement of good, you certainly have every right to know the truth for every other spiritual being. In loyalty to principle, you are compelled to see perfection everywhere and for everyone. Every other spiritual being is an individualization of yourself. Therefore, there is no other one to be treated. If you believe that there is a material man to be treated, you are entering and entertaining lies about the spiritual man. Since these lies exist nowhere except in your own mind, if anyone appears to need treatment, it is yourself. Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thy own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Matthew 7:5. What is a demonstration? Demonstration is a revelation or realization. When one makes a demonstration, it simply proves that he has become conscious of the thing he desired as it has eternally existed in reality. How does one get a realization? By reaching a point of conviction in your own mind. Heaven is a state of feeling, therefore you cannot think about the things you wish to demonstrate. You must feel them before they become visible manifestation. Feeling is spiritual vision. You must make a thing real to yourself if you wish to possess it. So why do so many people fail in demonstration? Because they depend upon the dead letter of truth instead of animating their words and thoughts with the spirit or feeling. It is the spirit that quickeneth. The words that I speak unto you, they are the spirit and they are life. Life is existence. Therefore, if you wish a thing to exist for you, you must give it spirit or feeling. Jesus' words were spirit and life because they were audible expressions of his clear realization of good emanating from the power of his own mind. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. If a man thinks in his heart, he feels something, whereas if he thinks with his brain, his thoughts are nothing but mechanical vibrations. For this very reason, people who depend wholly upon books and teachers do not progress, for they have had nothing but the letter of a message, which means nothing until they realize or feel it from the depth of their soul. Then it becomes a living reality. Is it right to have a definite desire for anything? Desire and fulfillment are one and the same thing. When you find yourself desiring any particular thing, it is an indication that the idea is already completed in mind, or you would not have become conscious of the desire for it. But you must not entertain desire in consciousness if you wish to manifest fulfillment. You merely recognize the wish or desire as a signpost which is pointing the way to fulfillment. Jesus gave us a secret when he said, "What things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that you receive them, and ye shall have them." Mark 11:24. In other words, when desire comes to mind, reverse it instantly by acknowledging the fact that every idea is instantly and eternally fulfilled. By so doing, desire becomes a very constructive idea rather than a belief in lack, and serves to remind you that you are now in possession of everything you need. A knock on a door announces the arrival of someone. Desire is like the knock on the door announcing the fulfillment in consciousness of the thing desired. Since you are mind and not body, whenever you conceive an idea, you have actually received the thing itself, for ideas are tangible and real to spiritual consciousness, the only mind there is. What is the virtue in the use of denial and affirmation? They are of no avail unless you get a clear realization of the principle that underlies them. Most students use them as a curative formula without the slightest knowledge of their meaning. In such cases, they are dependent upon blind faith, and the repetition of the mere words become sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal, the very thing Jesus warned his disciples against when he was teaching them how to pray. Is it possible for one person to send negative thoughts to another and malpractice upon them? It is just as impossible to transfer thoughts from one person to another as it is to send the numeral 2 from one place to another. If mind fills all space, thought must also be omnipresent, as mind without thought is inconceivable. Anyone who believes another can malpractice upon him is merely a victim to his own false belief. It is absurd to believe that another person's thought can enter your consciousness unless you accept them. The same thing applies to so-called hypnotism. No one can control another through suggestion, but if one accepts the belief in hypnotism and believes another can control him, he will experience his own belief, for the nature of mind is to function every idea presented to it. 60 years ago, people believed in malpractice and hypnotism, and the belief is still quite prevalent among a certain class of thinkers. But those who are spiritually illumined are able to see through these deceptions, and they are rapidly freeing themselves from such misconception. Should one outline or visualize how a demonstration should work out? The Father your mind knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. Your mind being all intelligence, and having the power to give form, outline, and color to any idea, needs no dictation or outline. You are the means by which mind reflects its ideas in tangible form. Therefore, you have nothing to do but bear witness to its perfect work. If you do visualize, it simply means that you are actually seeing the thing which was predestined to happen, but the act of visualization did not bring it about. If you could cause anything to happen by your thinking, then God would not be the only cause. Thinking is an effect and not a cause. If we are spiritual beings now, why is it necessary to study the truth? When one is seen studying the truth, it is an infallible sign that the action of God or the Holy Ghost has descended upon him. The spiritual man never thinks of himself as a separate being. Since he is God's consciousness, he can only be self-conscious, that is, conscious of his real self, God. Those fortunate individuals who find themselves turning to God should be very grateful, for it is proof of Christ in their midst. How can I truthfully declare that I am well when I feel ill, declare abundance when I apparently have no money, declare happiness when I am miserable? Truth is always declaring itself. Truth or God is the only speaker. When you declare, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am happy, you are functioning in divine intelligence. The illusory sense, which reports disease, poverty, and misery, is ignorant and its false conception. No matter what the false report may appear to be, you are eternally having a joyous and prosperous time in heaven. That is the truth that Jesus would set you free. If I am already free in spirit, from what am I to be set free? Through spiritual perception, you will be set free from the illusory sense that believes there is a material man in trouble. How will I know when I am on a spiritual basis? When you are able to prove the nothingness of sin, disease, and everyday problems by demonstrating the allness of good. When will evil cease its apparent existence? Evil ceases for every individual in direct proportion that he ceases to believe in it. As long as you believe in evil, you will have to contend with it. Evil is a lie about good. If you wish to experience constant peace and happiness, you must dispel the lie or false cause evil from your consciousness. Is it correct to say that man creates his own universe? When one is sufficiently advanced in consciousness to realize that God is individual mind as well as a universal, he also realizes who says, I create. If it is wrong to use supplicatory prayer, why did Jesus say, ask and it shall be given to you, and give us this day our daily bread? Jesus evidently realized that people were too materially minded to be told that they were spiritual beings in possession of the kingdom of heaven here and now. Even the disciples themselves did not understand until Jesus made his marvelous demonstration over death and came out of the tomb. The Lord's Prayer has helped millions of people, but it would not have been understood if it had been written in the way which Jesus must have prayed for himself. The key to miracles lies in Jesus' statement, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye have received them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. In other words, believe that you are a spiritual being in heaven, and have received all goods, and ye shall have all your desires here on earth. Heaven and earth are but terms used to indicate invisibility and visibility. That which you realize within the invisible will be visibly expressed in what is commonly called the earth. Hence the prayer, Thy kingdom, the invisible ideas, come on earth, be visibly expressed as it is in heaven. Let the two worlds function as one. What will happen to the material world and the material man when we awaken to the truth of being? The very same thing that happened to the flat earth when Columbus proved the earth to be a sphere. The people ceased believing in a lie, and the flat earth vanished into its native nothingness, for it never existed. When individuals refuse to believe in a material world and a material man, sin, disease, and death will vanish like the flat earth. The lie about man is the basis of all inharmony. Aristotle pointed out that the animal soul, or the mortal mind, being conscious of perishable things, perishes with them. When people cease believing in mortal mind, when the things which it appears to create as well as the very mentality itself will perish together, for they are both one and the same thing. Myth. And then shall we see each other as spiritual beings face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. 1 Corinthians 13:12. How can one prove that heaven is here and now? If one seems to be experiencing an inharmonious condition and can realize the truth about himself as he actually is in heaven, governed and controlled by the principle of good, the apparent negative condition will vanish and he will witness harmony instead of discord. This is called healing. It is proof that reality must be here or you cannot experience it. What proof have we that a man does not create his own thoughts? There is no separate man to create thoughts of his own. Besides, if one had the alternative of creating his own thoughts, he would create only heavenly ones. What is the distinction between ideas and thoughts? An idea originates in the divine mind and is always good. Thoughts are not always good, proving that their basis is changeable and elusive, hence they have no real origin. This is why they have been termed offshoots of the mortal mind. Ideas come from within. Thoughts are termed vibrations by the natural scientist and are external. When I am turning in thoughts to God in heaven, how can I get the same intimate touch that I used to experience when praying in the old Orthodox way through Jesus Christ? You will receive the sense of real communication with God if you will acknowledge all good, all beauty, loveliness, life, joy, and activity as emanating from God. Remember that good is God, or Emmanuel, with us. When you realize that God or good is never so far as to be near, you will feel the intimate touch with the Father or cause that you desire. Asking in the name of Jesus Christ simply means that in true prayer you are to acknowledge the nature or name of Jesus Christ, whose nature is good. Is it right to treat for a person who is at the same time under the care of a physician, or for one who is taking medicine? There is but one thing to be handled in treatment, and that is your own concept of the spiritual man. Whether or not you treat for one under these conditions depends upon your own state of mind. If you are sufficiently advanced to impersonalize evil, you will never hesitate treating for anyone under any condition. Whether a person uses drugs or not depends upon his state of consciousness. When he is sufficiently advanced in spiritual understanding, he will cease being ill, and there will be no necessity for the use of materia medica. I think Mrs. Eddy removed all condemnation for the use of material means when she wrote in Science and Health, page 444, "If Christian scientists ever fail to receive aid from other scientists, their brethren upon whom they might call, God will still guide them into the right use of temporary and eternal means. Step by step will those who trust Him find that God is our refuge and strength, and very present help in trouble. If you find yourself resorting to what is commonly termed materia means, it is merely a signal to gain more understanding." How would one go about to interest a person in the study of truth? You should never force your opinions on another. When one is sufficiently interested to ask questions, you can seize the opportunity to answer them by expressing the great joy and benefits to be derived from an understanding of truth. Every time the thought comes to you that another does not know the truth as you do, for instance, you must reverse such false conception by realizing that man knows truth, loves truth, and desires truth, for God is truth. By acknowledging this, you will find he will be seen to display more interest because you will have overcome the false belief that suggests there is a man who does not understand. What is meant by getting your thoughts clear when endeavoring to realize truth? In true prayer or treatment, the aim is to put all thoughts of a material world or a material man out of mind, and to form as clear a concept as possible of the underlying principle of reality. There will be times when your concept of the world of reality will be so clear that you will feel great joy and happiness while praying or treating. At other times it may seem difficult to think of reality. In the first case of clear realization, there are few negative thoughts coming to your consciousness. In the latter case, there are more negative thoughts which appear to form the mist or mystification that prevents spiritual perception. Never force yourself to treat. It does not help in the least. Wait patiently upon the Lord. Your consciousness will soon clear, and you will discern things as they actually are in heaven. If mortal mind is nothing, why should one try to improve it? It is necessary in absolute truth to know what nothing means. Herbert Spencer says that which is real is permanent, which is not real, is not permanent. The so-called material man, sin, disease, and death, not being permanent, are not real. Therefore, they are nothing. It is evident that the only way to overcome nothing is to introduce something in its place. The belief in mortal mind, being a seeming absence of good, can only be overcome by introducing the presence of absolute good. The word thing means something thought. Wherever there is a thought, there must be a thinker. Since mind or God is all there is, then all real thought must emanate from mind. Mind and its ideas are the only reality and the only permanence. In absolute truth, we do not deny the apparent existence of sense impressions, but we do deny the reliability and permanence of the apparent senses and their false impressions. You should not work against mortal mind, for there really is no such thing. To work against it is to accentuate your belief in it. Mortal mind is a term used to indicate that which is contrary to good. Unfortunately, it has been accepted as something to be feared and guarded against. Consequently, it has been credited with a great deal of power. But the only power it has is the power you give it in your own consciousness. In treatment, you should not deal with mortal mind. You should strive only to realize absolute good, and the myth will automatically vanish. When you are fully convinced that there is but one mind, you will have lost all belief in mortal mind, and you will waste no further time in dealing with nothing. I want something more than blind faith. If a problem is solved by realizing that I am one with the infinite, what attitude should I take? Blind faith fluctuates between belief and understanding. The average student fails to demonstrate because he depends upon formulas, such as affirmations and certain practices, without realizing the truth back of them. This is a fair example of blind faith. You must realize that all that God is, you are. This being true, there are no problems to be solved. What is the distinction between an absolute scientist and any other mental worker? The test of an absolute scientist is whether or not he is recognizing one power or two. The absolute does not admit opposites. Therefore, if one believes that he must constantly protect himself or others against so-called evil, he is an absolute scientist in name only. Jesus said, "I came not to destroy, but to fulfill." Believing in constant protection is to believe there is a power which can harm you, and your treatment will be an attempt to destroy something which really does not exist. In such case, you are a house divided against itself. You fulfill the law only when you cease to combat an illusory sense. I recently heard a Christian scientist say that all mental science outside of the church organization is mortal mind science. Will you please explain this statement? In Science and Health, page 127, Mrs. Eddy wrote, the terms divine science, spiritual science, Christ science, or Christian science, or science alone she employs interchangeably according to the requirement of the context. These synonymous terms stand for everything relating to God, the infinite, supreme, eternal mind. There is no physical science, inasmuch as all truth proceeds from the divine mind. These references completely answer the church scientist who believes in mortal mind science. If all truth proceeds from the divine mind, and divine mind is infinite, then everyone who voices the truth must be within the status of divine mind. Since it is impossible to monopolize truth or God, or to restrict it, it is logical to presume that truth can express outside of the church organization as well as in it. In fact, there can be no inside or outside, since truth fills all space. To believe that the science of mind, God, is confined to any particular church is to believe that the finite can confine the infinite. Any scientist who makes such erroneous statements confesses her own ignorance of the teaching of her textbook. If all individuals are God's image and likeness, what is the meaning of the statement, mortals are not the children of God? That which constitutes a mortal is the false belief which is placed upon the spiritual man. On page 591 of Science and Health, mortal mind is defined thus: nothing claiming to be something, for mind is immortal, mythology, error creating other errors, a suppositional material sense, alias the belief that sensation is in matter, which is sensationless. If mortals are the offspring of nothingness, mythology, then there are no such people. It is quite obvious that God never created a myth or mortals, for everything he created has identity or form. The mortal is the lie that mystifies and prevents one from acknowledging the spiritual man who is eternally present. Why is it so difficult to get rid of evil? Because it is absolutely impossible to get rid of nothing. It can be scientifically proven that evil has no existence, that it is nothing but an illusory sense. Any attempt to rid yourself of nothingness only strengthens your belief in evil. You may argue that evil does exist, for you see the evidence all around you. The flat earth existed to deluded individuals until Columbus proved that the earth always was round. It is absolutely futile to use any method or system whereby you expect to overcome evil. You have only to realize its non-existence, and the truth will make you free. Why is it so easy for mortal mind to apparently create, but so difficult for it to destroy its false creation? The illustration of a sleeping dream answers this question perfectly. Suppose while you are asleep you experience all sorts of unpleasant creations. You are not aware of the cause of this dream, neither do you know what you are dreaming, for the creations are very real to the sleeping sense. Compare this dream sense with mortal mind, and you will readily see how ignorant it is of its false creation, since its own illusory sense is all there is to its creation. You can readily see that it cannot destroy its apparent creation, for it is ignorant of itself. Buddha said, "Ignorance is the cause of all misery." It is quite evident that one continues to experience the unpleasant creations of the sleeping dream until he awakens. When the dream sense vanishes, the apparent creations vanish with it, for the dream sense is all that constitutes the creation. Did it ever occur to you that there are no objectifications in your dreams, even though you seem to see solid objects? That which is termed materiality is no more solid or concrete than the objects you see in your dream. This is why everything is controlled by mind. If there is no mortal mind, who or what is it that says, "I am mortal mind"? Suppose you dream that you are walking down the street and meet an old friend with whom you stop to converse. Since you are the only man present, and you are in bed and not on the street, who or what is the man on the street? Is he not an illusory man carrying on an illusory conversation? Can you not see how the material man is a liar from the beginning, and the father or cause of lies? The mortal mind, being a lie itself, naturally creates nothing but lies. It cannot know the truth any more than truth can conceive error, because each is foreign to the other. I find it comparatively easy to demonstrate the things which I am not much concerned about, but my greatest desire seems to be withheld from me. Why is this? The nature of mind is to function every idea impressed upon itself. As long as desire is uppermost in your consciousness, you will not demonstrate fulfillment. The reason you get the things you are not concerned about is because you take no anxious thought, and they are automatically expressed as your divine heritage. Everything that you can possibly desire is already fulfilled in mind, but a longing desire prevents you from seeing it visibly expressed. Many complain because they do not demonstrate, but if they will examine the conception they hold in mind and compare them with their experiences, they will find them identical. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss. Mind gives you whatever you ask. Therefore, if you wish to realize fulfillment, do not cling to desire. Every individual demonstrates 100% of all the time, but usually 99% of the negative side, for he indulges more or less in that kind of thinking. Do you believe a person should change his residence geographically if things are not as harmonious as he desires? Unless one improves his state of consciousness, he will be just as unhappy in one place as another. You cannot run away from his consciousness, which is the basis of existence. Is it right to give money to beggars on the street? When the senses report a beggar, reverse the material fable by thinking of God and the spiritual man. Bear in mind that there are actually no beggars there. If you give, believing in poverty, you are but giving to your own false concept of the spiritual man, and you are as deluded as the beggar who believes he is in want. If you wish to live in absolute peace and harmony, you must not recognize anything unlike good. Whenever you contribute to any cause that admits lack, you actually help to keep the false belief alive. It is a noble thing to give when you do with a sense of joy and love, but to give while admitting poverty, you merely subject yourself to the same limitation. There are no beggars, nothing but a false belief about the real man. If you will know this truth whenever you pass a beggar, you will help him far more than you would by contributing money. You will also help to free the world from the false conception of lack. What is the meaning of the end of the world? The so-called material world is a lie about the spiritual world which is eternally at hand. Since a lie is based upon something true, it must have had a beginning. Since the material world began is a false concept, it must end. But the end is not to be feared, for it simply means the end of sin, disease, and death. When there are sufficient people knowing the nothingness of evil and the allness of God, then all will tears be wiped away, all misery will have vanished before the light of truth. When every student desires an understanding of truth for truth's sake, and not because he has a negative condition to overcome or some demonstration to make. The millennium will be rushed in, and the kingdom which is now on earth will be equally enjoyed by each and every individual. Those who know how to pray scientifically are called the elective servants of God, but they will save the earth by removing all false concepts from consciousness. I have studied and declared the truth for many years, yet I do not get results. How do you account for this? Declaring the truth with the expectation of getting results is not believing in completeness. When you declare the truth because it is true, your results will follow as naturally as night follows day. Since sight is spiritual, you cannot see anything in what is termed the material world until you see or spiritually perceive it in heaven, for your spiritual vision is understanding. In other words, when you understand or see spiritually, heaven and earth become united in consciousness and functions as one world. Is it possible to advance to a point in understanding where one gives up all forms of treatment? Treatment has been exploited more than anything in the field of metaphysics. It has been used as a device for healing rather than an acknowledgement of the fact that there is nothing to heal. If one is to pay the uttermost farthing, all false practices must be abandoned. As one advances in spiritual understanding, he forsakes all forms of treatment in proportion to his ability to discern that there is nothing to treat. This discernment is the biggest and the highest form of treatment, for it acknowledges but one power, God. When one has attained this place in consciousness, he automatically lays aside all words as treatment and rests in the allness and completeness of his own mind. This is his perpetual treatment and protection. He then unfolds from the basis of spirit rather than using treatment to approach spirit. When you know that 2 times 2 equals 4, you no longer talk about it or repeat your multiplication table. It remains an eternal fact, and you demonstrate it at will. Is it right to desire material objects? There are no material objects. All objects are ideas or identities of spirit. Too many people make the mistake of living in an invisible world. If you wish to demonstrate the things necessary for your happiness, do not give your mind the idea of invisibility, or you never will experience the kingdom of heaven to sense and sight. It will always be invisible to you. What attitude should I take when I read books on absolute truth? Never assume the attitude that you must read or do your daily lessons because you have something to be adjusted. This would be rank superstition and will accomplish nothing. But if you read because you love to enjoy the truth about God and yourself, you will derive great benefit, for you will be dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. Is it possible to foretell the future or to prophesy what is going to take place? St. Paul pointed out that predestination is true. There are numerous methods used for foretelling future events, but they are not scientific unless they are based upon the same principle as demonstrated by Jesus and the ancient prophets. The book of Revelation is a record of the pictures of the world as foretold by St. John the prophet. There is no advantage to be gained by what is commonly called fortune-telling, unless one is able to reverse any negative pictures or thoughts that may be foreseen and eliminate them through true prayer before they come to pass. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And on my servants and on my handmaidens I will pour out in these days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Acts 2:17-21. It is a great mistake to be looking to the future for as long as you do. You cannot function the completeness of eternal now. By striving to live only in the instant, you will be constantly protected from all beliefs in material pictures that are predestined to happen at any given moment. Is it necessary for a student of truth to constantly tithe in order to be prosperous himself? There is no greater deception than the belief in tithing. To believe that you must give 10 cents to God before he will give you $1 is the rankest kind of superstition. Such teaching is blind faith because it advocates that one should perform a certain act without any knowledge of the principle back of it. When tithing is analyzed from the basis of absolute truth, it presents some vast difference than a beginner may detect upon the surface. This superstition has been exploited at the expense of thousands and to the enormous benefit of those who profess to teach the truth. Since there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, all deceptive practices must be exposed sooner or later. Paying your tithe to God means giving 1/10 of your time in conscious communion. Since God is mind, it stands to reason that you must give thoughts and not money. If you have a piece of work to do that will require 1 hour of your time, by first devoting 1/10 or 6 minutes to prayer, you will do the work more efficiently and easily, for you will be dependent upon God. This is the only true tithing. It is a noble thing to give, but when you do so, give for the sheer love of it, but not with an axe to grind. Give as the sun gives of its warm rays without any sense of receiving. If you give 10% of your money expecting to receive 100% in return, you are seeking the loaves and fishes. This is equivalent to bribery. Why do spiritual teachers and practitioners charge for their service? One who has attained sufficient understanding to practice and instruct is considered a professional in every line of work. Whether one has a definite charge for his or her service or works on a love offering depends upon the value one places on himself. I cannot make any distinction between a definite charge or giving a person to understand that he must give a love offering. If one is actually rendering a service in metaphysics, he is just as justified in placing a value upon his time as any other professional worker. I worked on a love offering basis until I learned the priceless value of the Christ consciousness. If it is little enough to demand money in exchange for spiritual consciousness, which is the one thing that every individual must attain before he enters the kingdom, practicing and teaching the truth is just as much of an art and profession as painting a picture or practicing the science of music. When one places a definite charge upon his time, it is a sign that he has attained an abundant consciousness. Such a person is qualified to help his fellow man, and the labor is worthy of his hire. Why is so much stress laid upon the capitalization of certain words in metaphysics? Upon the present time there have been a great sense of separation between God and man. Mind, meaning God, has been and still is spelled with a capital. The word mind, referring to man's mind, has been and still is spelled with a small letter. The same authors teach at the same time that only mind of man is God. If this is true, why not use the capital in both cases or eliminate it when referring to God, since God and man are one? These inconsistencies cannot stand up any longer. The light of truth is dispelling the darkness of ignorance. Good is always good, whether it is spelled with a capital or not. A rose is always a rose, whether you capitalize it or call it by some other name. If it were not for the fact that this book was written for the purpose of clearing up such discrepancies in metaphysics, and in doing so, it seems necessary to use capitals for the purpose of making distinct reference, the author never would have capitalized the words referring to God any more than she would have capitalized all words referring to man, for they are one and the same nature. What happens after death? To admit eternal life and then elaborate upon what happens after death is an attempt to explain why you do nothing and go nowhere. One does not have to elaborate upon the nothingness of 2 times 2 equals 5. By understanding that 2 times 2 equals 4, the falsity of 5 is automatically dispelled. One need not explain death and its apparent false association in order to prove that life is the only reality. By postulating eternal life, the deception of death is revealed. Jesus said, "For by man came death, and by man must come the resurrection." You will note that he said, "By man came death, and by man must come the resurrection." In other words, man is the one who conceived the erroneous belief in death, and he is the one who must bring about the resurrection of life in his own consciousness. Death is not an actuality to be experienced before one reaches heaven. Death is a lie. That is why it has been called the last enemy. If death ushered one into heaven, it would be a friend, and we should all hasten to experience it. But death is a false concept, and is to be classed with disease and every other limitation. It must be overcome in each and every individual consciousness before one attains heaven, and until it is denied as persistently as one denies sickness, poverty, and every other inharmonious experience, individuals will continue to experience burying the dead. Since no one can actually experience death in his own consciousness, he can only appear to be dead to the other fellow. Hence Jesus' remarks, "Let the dead, those deluded in consciousness, bury their dead." The ones who believe they bury their loved ones are the dead ones, for they experience a belief in death. In order to experience a thing, you must be conscious of it. Since the belief in death is unconsciousness, it would be necessary for one to function unconsciousness while still in a state of consciousness in order to die. Since this is an utter impossibility, there is but one conclusion: that death is pure delusion and can be transcended by anyone who catches the vision of his own eternal life, which is his own omnipresent consciousness. Jesus and John proved this great truth while still on earth, proving that heaven is a state of mind and not a locality to be reached through the experience of such a negative belief as death. When each and every individual strives to overcome the belief in death in his own mind, then the last enemy will be destroyed, as readily as we heal disease, and then will all awaken in consciousness to the eternal facts of life. It is logical to presume that those from whom we appear to have been separated by the false concept of death have never changed, for life is changeless. The constant belief in death, which includes separation and grief, distorts the vision and prevents one from seeing reality. Hence, individuals are unseen by those who believe they bury the dead. Believing in death can affect one's business and supply as well as the body, for it is a belief in the cessation of life, which is all activity. When one ceases to believe in death, he will have less disease, for fear of death induces physical discomfort. Fear of disease induces poverty, for if one does not have money for food, he believes he must die. People are afraid of the elements, for they believe in death and destruction. Individuals are afraid to travel for fear of accidents and death. In fact, every limitation can be traced to the last enemy, death. All one needs to do is to reason logically from the basis of absolute truth in order to clear his consciousness of the false belief which causes more apparent grief than any other. First of all, we are spiritual beings. This fact excludes a material man who is supposed to die. Heaven is here around us, so we cannot go any other place. Since there is but one mind, and it is infinite, there must be but one plane of consciousness. The theory of various planes through which one must pass before he reaches heaven is another false concept. It has been used as an excuse for the inability to explain the allness of mind and the nothingness of the illusion. When the belief in death has been overcome, there will be no necessity for birth. Both false concepts will vanish together. It has been stated by one of the great understanding that if we were possible to take an accurate census of the earth, we would find the population never alters. The belief in birth and death gives the false impression of increase and decrease. Immanuel Kant wrote, "This world's life is only an appearance, a sensuous image of the pure spiritual life and the whole world of sense, only a picture swimming before our present knowing faculty like a dream, and having no reality in itself. For if we should see things and ourselves as they are, we should see ourselves in a world of spiritual natures, with which our entire real relation neither began at birth nor ends with the body's death." Please explain reincarnation. The theory of reincarnation teaches that man leaves this plane of existence and goes out in various astral bodies, and then comes back in about 1,500 years to complete something which he failed to finish on a previous journey. Such a belief keeps one in bondage to time and prevents man from ever reaching the ultimate goal. Spiritual man, the only man, has always existed in a perfect state of consciousness. It is the false belief in the Atman, or self, that wanders in a deluded state of mind until awakened by the absolute truth, and then the so-called misrepresentations, known as astral bodies, disappear forever, for they are nothing but fictitious states of mind identical to the sleeping dream. We should not be the least bit concerned about what the theory says we might have been in the past or will be in the future. The important question is, who am I now, and what am I doing at this very instant? Absolute truth reveals the fact that there never was a yesterday, for when we lived it today, now. When tomorrow arrives, we will live it today, now, so it is quite obvious that we live in the eternal now. Is it possible to see the departed or to commune with them? This question is perfectly answered in Science and Health, page 75. When you can awaken yourself or others out of the belief that all must die, you can then exercise Jesus' spiritual power to reproduce the presence of those who have thought they died but not otherwise. Since man is an individualized consciousness, characterized by the divine spirit as idea, not matter, he cannot lose his identity or be annihilated by death. God is individual mind. This one mind and his individuality comprise the elements of all forms and individualities, and prophesies the nature and stature of Christ, the ideal man. God is not part, but the whole. In his individuality I recognize the loving, divine Father, Mother, God, from Miscellaneous Writings, page 102. If we are to accept such statements as scientific truth, we cannot admit separate beings subject to death. Since there is no death and individual mind is God, it is logical to presume that there can be no separation between individuals, hence communication is eternally preserved. In fact, the only communication there can be is the presentation of ideas from the divine mind, God, to his own individualized self, the ideal man, Christ. Since there is but one mind and all individuals eternally live and move and have their being in the one mind, who or what is there to sever communication? As long as one believes in death, he cannot contact the idea that constitute the consciousness of his loved ones who have apparently departed. But when one has overcome the belief in death, he is not only able to think about the departed, but he can also reproduce the form, for form is an infinite idea in mind. Jesus proved this fact by walking and talking with his disciples after so-called death. As long as there is any question whether people in this world can communicate with the departed in another world, it is quite evident that such controversy is based upon the belief in two worlds and many minds. But when we accept the fact that there is but one mind, it is quite obvious that this divine mind is an instant and eternal communication with each individualization of itself. Since death is nothing, it never has and never will separate anyone from anything. We have proven the nothingness of disease by revealing health, the nothingness of poverty by demonstrating abundance. Our next step is to prove the nothingness of death, with its supposed separation, by believing and striving to understand the evidence of perpetual life, which are so often presented to us. If the only mind we possess is God, is there any cause for doubt if we should behold the identity or form of combinations of ideas which constituted a loved one before his supposed death? Is not the all-intelligent mind capable of recognizing its own ideas regardless of whether the deluded senses say they have departed or not? This is not spiritualism. It is the truth of being. It is the prerogative of the ever-present divine mind and of thought, which is in rapport with his mind, to know the past, the present, and the future. Despite what another may say upon the subject, I am thoroughly convinced that there are no departed spirits. When we have destroyed the last enemy, the false belief in death, then shall we see face to face our loved ones who have never departed. Thus we will prove the omnipresence of God and his individualized self, the Christ. Is it necessary to explain evil in order to destroy it? Evil is self-destructive when you realize the nothingness of it. We must not consider the false side of existence in order to gain the true solution of life and its great realities. Does every thought create a condition if one does not handle it? Thoughts do not create anything. They merely indicate that there are conditions which will be manifested if you do not reverse them. You must control evil thoughts in the first instance, or they will control you in the second. In other words, if you do not reverse the evil suggestion which indicate the predestined condition as they come to mind in the first instance, you will have to handle a condition in the second. Only thoughts that reach a point of conviction are expressed. Thoughts and things are one and the same. So-called evil thoughts have no more power to harm than one belief in them permits. But once you accept a false belief, you animate it with the power of your own mind. Therefore, you are responsible for the only power which it has. This explains how many people unconsciously malpractice upon themselves. Is absent treatment as effective as the personal contact? It is often more effective because the practitioner sees and hears less of the condition to be healed, thus enabling her to clear her own consciousness more readily. Some of the finest results I have ever obtained have been through absent treatment. There is no time nor space in mind, therefore it is not necessary for a patient to be present when treatments are given. Why is it easier to realize the truth for others than it is for oneself? This is all a matter of belief. If you make any law for yourself, you will be subject to its influence. The apparent problems of another never seem as real as your own. That is why it is easier to deny them. Can problems pertaining to finances, business, domestic life, etc. be healed as readily as sin and disease? Just as the principle of mathematics is applied to all problems of arithmetic, so the application of the principle of being applies to all apparent problems of life. In fact, it is by demonstrating the principle under all conditions that you prove your understanding. Are audible treatments more effective than silent prayer? The most scientific practitioner is the one who knows there is nothing to be healed. Until one reaches a state of mind, he is inclined to deny evil and affirm good in either audible or silent expression. Some people believe that the audible word is more effective than the silence, but this is only a matter of one's own belief. Every denial is but an affirmation of the evil which one denies, and whenever indulged in, becomes more or less hypnotic. The individual is the best healer, who asserts himself the least, and thus becomes a transparency for the divine mind, who is the only physician. The divine mind is the scientific healer. Is it necessary to discover the cause of sin and disease before they can be healed? Looking for the cause of disease and sin is an attempt to discover a power other than God. The science of mind disposes of all evil. It is not necessary to call the disease by name or even argue against it. If you do continue in such practice, it is because you still believe in evil. My first discovery in the student's practice was this. If the student silently called the disease by name, When he argued against it, as a general rule, the body would respond more quickly, just as a person replies more readily when his name is spoken. But this was because the student was not perfectly attuned to divine science and needed the argument of truth for reminders. If spirit or the power of divine love bears witness to the truth, this is the ultimatum. The scientific way in the healing is instantaneous. The author has witnessed many instantaneous healings by realizing that God never needed a treatment. If your mind is God, your only consciousness must be the Christ consciousness. Therefore, when your mind or spirit bears witness to the truth, this is the ultimatum. The scientific way in the healing is instantaneous. Why? Because there is but one mind present, the individual mind, God. When God bears witness to truth, it is because the healing has already taken place in heaven, God's consciousness. I was once called upon to heal a girl who had been given up to die by 3 prominent surgeons. Had I attempted to deny negative symptoms, I would not have been known where to begin. I got a realization of the fact that I was consciousness, mind, and not body. I also realized that mind could only be conscious of life, health, freedom, and happiness. I did not deny doctors, hospitals, and nurses which seemed to surround her at the time. I included them in my consciousness as perfect ideas. Thus I had no sense of duality, only oneness. The healing was instantaneous and proved conclusively that all that is necessary to heal is to let the spirit, your own mind, bear witness to perfection. She was healed in one treatment. Do the planets have any control over man? Astrology is one of the most accurate methods of foretelling the future. The position of the planets indicate what is taking place or is predestined to take place on the earth plane. Even though astrology is one of the most accurate sciences, it is not true, for predestination is subject to changes through true prayer. The advantage to be gained through the study of astrology is that you have the advantage of being forewarned and can alter the negative thoughts or vibrations before they come to pass. Why is it so necessary to give before one can receive? Since there is but one, it is logical to presume that the giver is also the recipient. It is quite obvious then, if you wish to receive, you must give to yourself. The person who withholds with the idea of enriching himself is impoverished in due time, for he is withholding his own riches from himself. Since God is all, he must have given to himself, and in return he received his own manifestation. It is impossible to lack or to be deprived, no matter how much you give, when you realize that you are giving your own substance to yourself. This realization excludes all fear, the only thing which prevents you from demonstrating abundance. To begin with, in giving you never use your substance. The attitude you take in distributing the symbols which seem to constitute your earthly supply indicates whether or not you have attained the clear perception that God is the only giver and receiver. If one constantly thinks of good, will he prevent evil from happening? Thinking of good is a sign that false thoughts are not attacking you. If you will bear in mind that thinking is an effect and not a cause, you can determine what is about to happen by watching your thoughts. Why should one always turn in thoughts to God before he makes statements of truth? If God is all, there is nothing else to make statement about. One's success in demonstrating depends upon his ability to turn away from all thoughts of separate self or material world. Since you are demonstrating principle and not things, you must declare the truth about principle. By observing this rule, you will be seeking first the kingdom, and all things will be added. Please tell me the shortest, plainest, most certain way to make an atonement with truth. I cannot conceive of a better way than to realize that there is no separation between you and your divine nature, spirit. If you live, move, and have your being in spirit, you must partake of the same substance. If a single drop of an ocean could realize that it was already in the ocean, it would have made its atonement with the ocean. Since all air is unreal, why not understand that God, good, is all, and let it rest there than to spend so much time dealing with suppositional cause and effect? Whether one deals with suppositional cause or effect depends upon his spiritual understanding. When he is sufficiently advanced to perceive the allness of God, good, he automatically rests from all false practices. What is meant by Jesus saying, "Verily I say unto you, thou shalt by no means come out thence, till thou hast paid the uttermost farthing"? No one can come out of the false sense of material bondage until he has surrendered every belief in poverty, sin, disease, and death to the allness of good. The uttermost farthing is self-surrender, or the denial of a separate self, to the allness and completeness of the Christ self. How does one find the peace of God which passes all understanding? Peace is the result of mastership. Jesus was a master because he had mastered himself. When you realize that you are self-sufficient, self-reliant, self-maintained, and self-sustained, you will have realized your divine nature, and you become peaceful and poised in consciousness. If each and every individual is a complete representation of the male and female within himself, why do people marry? Until the earth is clean dissolved and all sense of separation has vanished, marriage will continue. A perfect union of male and female in marriage comes about when the individual has realized his or her own completeness. For instance, when the female realizes her male qualities of mind and the male realizes his female qualities, this realization will result in the demonstration of a perfect union, love wedded to spiritual understanding. One often hears it said that a spiritually minded person never marries. This is an erroneous conception. All people are spiritually minded, for there is but one mind. Every realization of truth is visibly expressed, otherwise it is not absolute truth. A perfect marriage on this so-called plane of existence bears evidence to the unity of the male and female qualities in the individual consciousness, the same as the realization of substance demonstrates money. The reason that there is no marrying or giving in marriage in heaven is because heaven is a perfect state of mind, wherein there is no conception of separation. Hence, there is no necessity of union. The most important point to be considered in metaphysics, if you wish to demonstrate the principle, is the union of the male and female quality of mind. You cannot demonstrate absolute truth until you realize the scientific fact which underlies this realization. Apparently, the whole of creation, from the lowest to the highest manifestation, represents the union of the male and female qualities. This creative process appears to be material and physical, but in reality it is spiritual. When a person realizes that the creative process takes place in mind through the union of the male and female qualities, his consciousness is in a state of individual completeness, and he automatically demonstrates this realization. To accept this union in your own consciousness as your premise is to base your conclusions upon completeness, and the result must be perfect creation or demonstration of anything you desire. I have proven this beyond all doubt and watched it work out miraculously in regard to the demonstration of money. Why should it be most noticeable in demonstrating money? Because money is the symbol of substance expressed. When the two, male and female, shall become one in consciousness, you will have made your atonement with infinite substance, and you can never lack. In every form or manifestation represents a priceless eternal verity just at hand. What does money symbolize? Money is substance expressed. Many people find it difficult to manifest money because their attitude toward it is wrong. At the very time when their desire is to demonstrate abundance, they are entertaining a feeling of lack. Fear of the lack of money prevents one from fulfilling his desire for it. Did you ever stop to consider if God's substance fills all space, there is nothing but God? If everything is God, good, then lack must be good in its right place. Then why condemn lack just because you associate it with the idea that you wish to see visibly expressed? As long as you see lack as the absence of substance, you will have an enemy that will deprive you of your desires. But when you realize that lack is a constructive idea, and when used rightly, it brings as harmonious result as abundance, you will have loved your enemy, and you will never be deprived again. To make your atonement with anything is to gain dominion over it, and to cease combating that which heretofore seemed like a limitation. A desire for money is perfectly legitimate because every idea of mind must be visibly expressed. If you wish to know the spiritual fact, you can discover it by reversing the material fable. Be the fable pro or con, be it in accord with your preconception or utterly contrary to it. When we consider the material fable concerning money, we discover that it is a belief of exchange. The whole world recognizes it as power. That is why it seems hard to get. The symbols called dollars and cents are in the realm of man or manifestation. Therefore, any dependence upon money, without a realization of the substance which sustains and supports the idea of money, is equivalent to depending upon a light globe for light without connecting it with the power of electricity. If you consider money a material manifestation, you will limit your expression of it. Money is its most important idea when its spiritual significance is taken into consideration. What is the spiritual fact to be discovered when we reverse the material fable? It is this. Truth says that mind, God, is the only substance. We cannot possess money until we perceive that the substance of our form or identity is the same substance or wealth of that which money is the identity. If you believe that you are spiritual and money is material, you separate yourself from it by accepting such a belief. But when you realize that money is a spiritual idea, that stands in the same relationship to mind, God, just as a rose. It will be visibly expressed without anxious thought. Since money is a symbol of exchange in this so-called material universe, it must symbolize or counterfeit some definite idea in the world of reality. The only exchange that can possibly take place in heaven is the exchange of ideas, since heaven is the realm of the mind. God-mind being all, it is logical to presume that mind circulates its own idea by means of its consciousness or Christ, the power of God. Mind does not circulate money. Mind circulates its ideas in consciousness, which is its own substance, color, and outline. If we wish to demonstrate money, we must first realize that the substance of our own consciousness is our only support, and that it gives the substance, color, and form to every one of our ideas, no matter the nature of the idea. Money does not give you anything. It is evidence of your understanding. When you build a rich, abundant consciousness of life, love, truth, beauty, joy, wisdom, intelligence, etc., you'll automatically demonstrate money, for money is substance or understanding expressed. Money is not something to be acquired. Money is substance. Jesus proved this by demonstrating his understanding of substance. Whenever a person depends upon money for his support and considers it a material manifestation, he is destined to lack it, for there is not and never can be a material manifestation in any form. On the other hand, when you realize that money is a definite idea by means of which mind circulates its idea of happiness, comfort, support, and the many beautiful things that man is capable of expressing when he possesses money, you will appreciate its value in terms of substance and not hard cash. Any individual who has money and clings to it because he believes his very existence is dependent upon it is just as impoverished as though he had none. Circulation indicates an abundant consciousness because it lacks fear. When one is afraid to circulate his money, it is because he believes it is his substance, rather than understanding that his mind is his substance. When you depend upon your ideas instead of money, you become self-sustained and self-supported because you are depending upon your mind and God. Ideas constitute the wealth of mind. Belief in a separate self causes people to depend upon cash for their support. Another erroneous belief is that form, such as money, is separate and apart from you. Such a belief tends to separate you from the manifestation of dollars. Substance does not become gold or silver. Substance includes its ideas, forms, and colors, the same as the substance of a mirror gives form and color to any object or idea placed before it. The color and form must be contained in the nature of the mirror, otherwise it could not reflect it. Likewise, every object, whether it be in the form of a body, money, or rose, must be the same identical substance. When people learn this great fact, they will no longer separate themselves from any object, and the results will be the spontaneous, visible manifestation of each and every idea. Always bear in mind that you are not to attempt to demonstrate money, but you are to demonstrate and prove the substance of your own consciousness. Mind and money are one and the same substance. If you are the individualization of God-mind, you are soul or identity and not body. If soul reflects substance, spirit, you must be the same substance. If you are the same substance, you are now all abundance. Then why ask for money? If you partake of the nature of substance and money partakes of the same substance, then you cannot lack money, for you are eternally one with it. There is no space between the idea of money and the form of the idea. Therefore, whenever there is an idea, there must be the form or manifestation. Identify yourself with money as substance, and you will always demonstrate abundance because you will express what you really are in totality. End of chapter, end of book. This audio presentation of There Is Nothing But God by Vivian May Williams has been brought to you by audioenlightenment.com. Copyright 2015. All rights reserved.